Emperor Commodus was a cruel tyrant. He used his power to indulge in his most depraved fantasies, both violent and sexual. He took pleasure in the degradation and manipulation of people, especially women, using his power to subject them to unimaginable horrors under the guise of entertainment and royal privilege. The history of his reign is one of corruption, murder, and violent lust. Emperor Commodus was second in cruelty only to Nero. He ruled alongside his father, Marcus Aurelius, for the first 3 years of his reign, becoming sole emperor in 180 AD. His father was the last of the 5 good emperors, and his actions were tempered by his Stoic philosophy, which guided every aspect of his life and rule. He ignored angry and lustful temptations and believed that if a man could control his urges, both physical and emotional, he could control his life. Commodus had none of these attributes and was quick to use his power to satisfy his own personal desires. The beginning of Emperor Commodus's rule marked the end of the Pax Romana, a period of relative domestic peace, justice, and prosperity that the 5 good emperors had given to the empire. Commodus was the 10th of 14 children and the only son to outlive his father. He was raised by Galen of Pergamon, a famed Roman physician and philosopher. Like most Romans of noble birth, the young Commodus was tutored extensively on philosophical and intellectual subjects. He spent his early years traveling with his father as he fought various wars against the barbarian enemies of Rome. Marcus Aurelius died suddenly on the 18th of March, 180 AD, whilst serving on the Danubian front, leaving Commodus as sole ruler. The moral failings of Commodus had been present from a young age. In one instance, a servant had failed to heat his bathwater sufficiently, and so the young soon-to-be emperor ordered him thrown into the furnace. As he was a young boy and did not yet have the authority to command somebody's death, lambskins were placed in the furnace in the hopes that the stench would convince him the execution had taken place. Roman historian Cassius Dio believed Aurelius was aware of these failings, saying, "Just one thing prevented him from being completely happy. Namely, that after rearing and educating his son in the best possible way, he was vastly disappointed in him." Another contemporary writer, Aelius Lampridius, wrote, "Even from his earliest years, he was base and dishonorable, and cruel and lewd, defiled of mouth moreover, and debauched." Cassius Dio, who lived through Commodus's reign, said his ascension was the beginning of the transformation of Rome from a kingdom of gold to one of iron and dust. Unlike his father before him, who had constantly been warring with Rome's many enemies, Rome under Commodus was militarily peaceful. But despite the peace found outside the walls of Rome, his rule was a time of intense internal and domestic strife, and of political machinations and unrest, fueled by Commodus's paranoia and greed. A sadistic emperor. Despite him almost immediately bringing an end to the Marcomannic Wars, which had waged for nearly the entire reign of Aurelius, Commodus's penchant for violence became apparent very early on in his reign. In the year 182, Lucilla, Commodus's sister, organized an assassination plot to kill the unstable emperor and install her and her husband as emperor and empress. Lucilla was unhappy living as a private Roman citizen and had a deep hatred for her sister-in-law, Brutia Crispina. Lucilla and other co-conspirators were concerned about Commodus's behavior and believed he was a danger to the safety and stability of the empire. The assassination was a failure. The assailant burst out from his hiding place, saying to Commodus, "Here is what the Senate sends to you." These words gave the guards time to respond, and the would-be killer was forcefully disarmed, leaving Commodus unharmed. For her crimes, Lucilla was sent into exile to live on the island of Capri, where she was then executed some years later. Despite not being involved in the plot, Commodus punished his remaining sisters by abusing them. He then began a relationship with one of his father's cousins and named his favorite female concubine after his own mother, Faustina the Younger. Not even his wife, Brutia Crispina, was safe from Commodus's rage. After 10 years of marriage, she was accused of adultery by the increasingly paranoid emperor, and like Lucilla, was forced into exile on Capri, and eventually executed. Commodus was responsible for many deaths during his reign, whether by his own hand or others. He became incredibly paranoid after the failed assassination plot and saw conspiracy everywhere he went. Commodus had many killed after the murder of Sauterus, his chamberlain. He murdered every man and woman of the Quintili family, exterminating the family name. He even ordered the killing of his own cousin, the noblewoman Vitracia Faustina, whom he had implicated in some paranoid conspiracy. Commodus was well known for his physical appetite. His lovers consisted of married women, prostitutes, freedwomen, and slaves. He purchased women and boys openly from both other nobles and common people, so long as he found them physically attractive. These women existed to cater to his sexual wants, and most were treated little better than slaves. With hundreds of concubines, he held lavish parties in the palace and bathhouses, living purely for pleasure, as his closest aide, Perennis, dealt with the political obligations of the emperor. Hercules Reborn. Despite not being an accomplished soldier like his father, Commodus wished to be seen as a great warrior and even believed himself to be the reincarnation of Hercules. To satiate these delusions of grandeur, Commodus made frequent appearances in the gladiator arena, though his victory was always ensured. He charged a fee of 1 million sesterces per appearance. This arrangement became problematic as he continued to appear in the arena, winning over 700 bouts, costing the government 700 million sesterces and putting it under severe economic strain. The Roman aristocracy resented having to pay these sums and were not happy to see the emperor fighting in the arena. Herodian says of Commodus, "But when he came into the amphitheater naked, took up arms and fought as a gladiator, the people saw a disgraceful spectacle. A nobly born emperor of the Romans, whose father and forebears had won many victories, not taking the field against barbarians or opponents worthy of the Romans, but disgracing his high position by degrading and disgusting exhibitions. He enjoyed slaying both beast and man, and in one particularly bloody event, he slaughtered 100 lions, almost certainly bound, seriously wounded or drugged, in a single day. On another, he killed 100 bears, spearing them from the safety of his raised balcony. He treated the powerless people of Rome as toys for his own enjoyment, especially in the arena. Enamored with mythology and fantasy, he would have disabled and disfigured beggars dressed as mythological creatures, forced to defend themselves in the arena with sponges in lieu of stones. Commodus would wear a lion skin and wield a club like his hero Hercules, and would beat these men to death, watched by a crowd of thousands. Commodus was obsessed with portraying himself as the new Hercules and spent endless amounts of money trying to convince people. He had the head removed from the Colossus of Nero, a 100-foot bronze statue of former Emperor Nero, and had it replaced with his bust, designed to look like Hercules. He commissioned the creation of marble busts depicting him in lion skins and had them sent to the far reaches of the empire. After the Great Fire of 191, when much of Rome was destroyed, he saw it as a perfect opportunity to rebuild Rome in his own image, wishing to rename it Colonia Lucia Annia Commodiana, Commodus's colony. He wished the Senate to be named the Commodian Senate, and vast Roman legions, the Commodianae. His megalomania had no end. He gave an edict in 190, insisting that his reign be referred to as the Golden Age, and even declared himself the new Romulus, as his reign had supposedly born Rome anew. He wished to rename all the days of the week and months of the year. January was Amazonius, August was Commodus, October was Herculeus, and December was Ex Superatorius, meaning victorious. The other months and all days of the week were all based on other grand titles he had bestowed upon himself. The death of a tyrant. Commodus became a problem for the nobility of Rome. His paranoia and instability meant no one was safe, and any perceived offense could be grounds for execution. His unstable rule was marked by countless conspiracies against him, some real and some imagined. In celebration of the Roman New Year, 192, Commodus wished to make a public appearance to the people of Rome. Rather than address the public in his royal purple robes from the steps of the palace, he wished to do it from the gladiator barracks, himself dressed as a gladiator. His mistress, Marcia, begged him not to bring further shame on the imperial family, which angered Commodus. He told his plans to the head of his Praetorian Guard, Latus, and faithful servant, Eclectus, who both also encouraged him to do otherwise for his own safety. Later that day, as Commodus bathed, his young boy servant, Commodus, came across a tablet and picked it up. After running into Marcia, she took the tablet from him, worrying that he might accidentally ruin it. Upon reading the note, Marcia discovered it was a list of those to be executed, with her name at the top. She summoned Latus and Eclectus, who were also on the list. They decided to kill Commodus before he could kill them. Marcia poisoned Commodus's wine, but it failed to kill him. They then paid Narcissus, a wrestler and Commodus's trainer, a hefty fee to strangle him to death. Commodus's death led to the ascension of Pertinax, who attempted to restore the Roman government to its former glory, lowering spending and removing corrupt individuals. He reigned for 86 days before being assassinated. The Praetorian Guard auctioned off the title of emperor to the highest bidder. In the 12 months that followed, Rome had 5 emperors. The empire was plunged into violence and instability until the eventual crowning of Septimius Severus in late 193. He had a reasonably successful reign until 211, when he died of illness in Roman Britain. Commodus's reign is seen by both contemporary and modern historians as being a turning point for the Roman Empire. The 5 good emperors who came before him were educated men who took an active role in the governing of the empire, and who wished to see it succeed. Commodus, on the other hand, wished for nothing more than glory and pleasure, though he was not willing to fight fair in order to gain this glory. He spent money whenever he wanted, and bought favor from the masses with endless spectacles and gifts. His turbulent reign and the corruption of his government paved the way for the Year of the 5 Emperors, perhaps the most unstable period of the Roman Empire.